I mean, fantasy tropes range a very long period of history, but it is, I often find somewhere in the realm of Renaissance, early American exploration
Uh,
kind of tiers, right?
Pirates of the Caribbean movies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of era. And like
There's still
faux era. So
justification to have, bows and swords and stuff, but yeah, guns are starting to make their way in.
yeah.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the feat Gunner. And unless I'm mistaken, this is the last feat in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. We completed something before the official release of the new books. Hooray!
And then we get to do it all over again. I'm so excited to start a new feat list. That's how are these feats compared to the last ones? Should you take these? All that fun stuff.
I'm looking
We
forward to
should,
that as well.
yeah, but for now we're talking about a feat that I think 5 people total have taken. So Gunner is from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The firearm rules were already a variant in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they have different elements for the different eras. I think they kind of fail to make them more interesting than just longbow but 2d8. Like a lot of these
Mm.
feel like they're just a crossbow with a different dice size, and there's not a tremendous amount of variation between the options. Which makes me a little bit low on them in general. Like if I want to have a character that wants to do gun stuff, I just be like, oh, cool. Just we'll replay. Like I literally have one of those right now. I'm running a campaign, and my one player wants to do a gunslinger, and I was like, okay, well instead of taking this feat, well let's just reflavor crossbow expert because we need a little bit more power at this table anyway. Um, because this feat doesn't give you a lot. It says you have a quick hand and a keen eye when employing firearms, granting you the following benefits: increase your dex score by 1 to a max of 20, high starting point.
Yep.
You gain proficiency with firearms. See firearms in the DMG. Now, which firearms you get is a big question because some of them are laser antimatter rifles that do 68 necrotic damage, and others are pistols that do a D10 piercing damage. So, big variation there. He also says you ignore the loading property of firearms, which is pretty relevant because it means you don't have to waste actions reloading. And it says beginning within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls. What are your initial thoughts? Should we dive into what the firearm options are, or do you want to talk about like what this actual thing gives you?
I'm gonna let you choose because I'm just on the whole not a fan of like modern things or sci-fi in my fantasy space.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, so real quick, I want to read what loading is just to see how relevant this is. So it says because of the time it required to load this weapon, you can only fire one piece of ammunition from it when used in an action, bonus action, or reaction to fire it, regardless of the number of attacks you can normally make. So if you are a rogue, you don't care because rogues only make one attack round anyway. But if you're a fighter
yeah,
or a ranger, or specifically the Matt Mercer option, critical role option, the Percy played it, gunsmith or whatever, that option, I think it's Gunslinger, that option wants to make more attacks, so you'll need a way to reduce the loading quality. That option gives those to you, though. So if you're playing
yeah.
that option, you specifically don't need this anyway. Other than that, are there any other reasons to take this? Well, let's look at, are firearms worth getting? So the Renaissance items, I think, are the ones you're most likely going to have access to. There's 3 tiers of them, and the DM can allow or disallow whatever ones they want. The Renaissance options are pistols and muskets. Pistols have a D10 piercing damage. They have ammunition and loading, and they have a range of 30 over 90. So these things are very short range compared to a longbow, compared to a short bow. And the
Right.
upgrade you get, though, is a D10 piercing damage over a D8 piercing damage, right? Muskets go up to D12. They are of a range of 40 over 120. They're loading and they're two-handed. So these are basically heavy crossbows, right? If we compare them to like the actual crossbows in the weapons table, we can see the light crossbows do a D8 piercing already. Heavy crossbows do a D10 piercing damage. So this is like a dice upgrade over your heavy crossbow. Is that worth a feat and asking your DM for all of this? Probably
Um,
not.
yeah, not definitely not for me.
Yeah, same. Like I don't want to necessarily jump those hoops. So we should upgrade it. We should say, okay, well, let's assume I can get the modern items. So they added another mechanic called reload. Reload means you do the loading quality after a certain number of attacks. So there's an automatic pistol. It's 2d6 piercing damage. It has reload after 15 shots. Range 50 over 150. Revolver is 2d8 piercing. Hunting rifle does 2d10 piercing. And the shotgun does 2d8 piercing, and they all have different amounts of reload. There's one thing that has a burst fire mechanic. All these different properties do different things. So burst fire says a weapon that has burst fire can make a normal single attack. It can do in a 10-foot cube area. Instead, each creature makes a DC 15 dex save or takes the weapon's damage. So it kind of turns your weapon into an area of effectability, which is neat. I like that conceptually a lot. It's definitely the most interesting happening here. And
Does the
one
rifle at
thing,
least get an amazing range or something?
the automatic rifle has a range of 80/240 with the burst fire quality. The hunting rifle has a range of 80/240 and no other upside over the automatic rifle. So
What's
no.
a longbow range?
80/240.
Okay, so
I think maybe longer. What? Sorry, it's 150/600.
yeah, all right, that's what I thought. Now that's what kind of crap rifles are we getting that
That
are so far outpaced by a bow?
I don't know. Even the laser rifle only has a range of 100/300.
Hmm.
Every single gun in this system has lower range than a longbow.
Yeah.
Neat. I do think the modern items are where you start to go. This is starting to be worth a feat because they are doing twice the dice size and have a neat property in one case. Only one of them gets burst fire. The rest of them are just like, okay, I have a 2d8 longbow. I have a 2d10 longbow is what they're going to feel like, but lower range still. The really cracked options, though, are the futuristic items because, so laser pistol's the floor. That's 3d6 radiant damage. That's still pretty good. Antimatter rifle is 68 necrotic damage.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's too much, one might say. And the regular laser rifle is 3d8 radiant damage. Notably, they only gave one weapon in this entire game burst fire. And they qualified it as a property for some reason. They could have just said it's in special like all the other ones do. That's not... Digesting all this, I think the ones that are most fitting are going to be Renaissance. I think those are the ones that are most likely to fit in your swashbuckling campaigns, especially. I definitely can envision worlds where you're trying to aim for, like... I mean, fantasy tropes range a very long period of history, but it is... I often find somewhere in the realm of Renaissance, early American exploration kind of tiers, right?
Pirates of the Caribbean movies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of era. And like
There's still
era.
justification to have, bows and swords and stuff, but yeah, guns are starting to make their way in.
Yeah, and they're a little bit clunky because you got to load them and stuff and
Right.
one shot before they're not that great. And again, a lot of those tropes and fantasies don't actually line up in history's timeline, from my understanding. A lot of it like happens in thousands of years apart, different places around the world, but we just jam them together because they look cool. And hey, I'm here to jam things together because they look cool. That's fantasy at its finest, baby. So I'm not opposed to things like shotguns and or muskets and pistols in my tables. I'm a little bit more opposed to shotguns and hunting rifles on my tables. I'm very opposed to laser rifles. So it really is going to be, is this worth it? Is going to depend on which ones you get. I don't think the modern are quite enough, but
you see it if for people that like the whole spell jamming thing, if you're going to other planets and stuff, and yeah, maybe you'll run into some plasma rifles or whatever. But that's not for
definitely
me.
true. Definitely true. I think the higher magic, the more you can even start to like take antimatter rifle is just a big laser stick, right? It's just a magic wand that you cannon out to shoot people with, and that does feel very fightery to me, especially in a spelljammer setting. So I could see that being a case for sure. I think if you're getting laser rifles or laser pistols with this, it does actually start to put you closer to casters if you aren't stacking sharpshooter on top of it. Like if you're not stacking other build proponents on top of it, getting the futuristic items off this feat seems pretty fair to me and a pretty cool way to expand it as later the game goes. And if you are in Spelljammer, if you are doing planescape stuff going across all the multiverse, I could see there being room for this. As is, if you're just getting Renaissance, no, definitely not. If you're getting Renaissance and Modern, maybe. If you're getting Futuristic, I'd probably take it. How you rate it then, I don't know. It's... No other like option in the game supports using firearms in an interesting or unique way. So it makes me think this thing's probably a 2.
2 sounds fine to me. I don't care that much. Let's see, what was I going to say? Yeah, I think the people that are going to take this are taking it more for the flavor than for the what it's actually giving you. You get a dex bump and you get to use firearms. If your DM isn't willing to reflavor crossbows and call them firearms, then you've got this. And
so here's the shitty thing about that, though, right? If I have a player at the table that is using crossbows and they are taking crossbow expert because it fits them flavorfully. And then I have a player at the table that is using guns, and they take gunner because it fits them flavorfully. They're not comparable, right?
Right.
Like one is way, 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 way more powerful than the other. So on flavor grounds, we're gonna see a schism dividing like just the raw power that characters bring to the table because someone wanted to play an archetype that isn't supported. This is not a supported archetype, right? There isn't.
Right.
It tells you it is because it's a feat, and then you take it and you get nothing meaningful from it comparatively, and you're bummed out. You go, okay, well, my pistol, I can shoot things within 5 feet of me. Okay, the guy with the longbow just did 4 this round. I did 15. Like, what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not an excuse for this thing to exist. It needs to, if they're going to create feats, they have to deliver on the fantasy they're saying. Otherwise, people will take them out of flavor reasons and be like, why does this suck so bad? Why is the guy with the great sword 1v9ing while I'm not producing any kind of contribution to this table because my feat doesn't do anything?
Yeah.
Bad game design.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like they felt forced to include something. All right, people want some guns. We'll give them something. This is not really what the game is supposed to be, but here you go. Have a plasma rifle. But
So like the options existing in the DMG don't fundamentally upset me. What fundamentally upsets me is that they down the road said we need to pad out a book. Let's reflavor crossbow expert as gunner and remove what made it powerful.
that's true.
That's not a feat. That's lazy. No. That's boring. That's not something that supports a new direction, a new build archetype. You can't like all of a sudden with just players and Toss Call of everything make a proficient, usable gunslinger without a ton of DM intervention. That's garbage. Hate that.
Yeah. All right, but it's technically something.
It is technically something. If you get especially antimatter rifles, it's more than something.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Gunner. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and we'll be back at some point in the future and talk about some more feats, some new feats. Yeah. Goodbye.